Today we're going to look at healthcare, and in particular healthcare support worker level 2 and level 3. Before we begin, let me just tell you a little bit about peer training. So we are a national training provider. We cover a wide variety of sectors, not just healthcare, but obviously healthcare today is what we're going to be talking about. You'll find more information on our website should you want to understand what other sectors we deliver in. We have a wealth of tutor occupational competency and excellent testimonials from our employers and our learners alike. And we have consistently good results, often resulting in distinction criteria, for example, and a lot of our healthcare learners in particular going on to do degree apprenticeships. So today we're looking at healthcare support worker level 2 and level 3, the first two boxes on our screen here. And we do also as a business cover other healthcare standards, level 5 in assistant practitioner, for example, and adult care, etc. So within the level 2 and the level 3, there are various modules to complete, slightly different at different levels. And it's important for you to understand what those modules are. So we're going to look at what the modules are on the next few slides to help you understand whether it is indeed a level 2 that would be more appropriate for you, or whether it would be a level 3 that is more appropriate. So the level 2 is called Healthcare Support Worker Level 2 Apprenticeship Standard, and in order to achieve the full standard you have to first have achieved the care certificate, the 15 units of the care certificate, the Healthcare Support Worker full set of standard as indicated by the Institute for Apprenticeships, Level 1 Maths and English, or have an equivalent, so this is referring to functional skills. However, you may well have a GCSE or an A-level or an O-level that may well cover you at level 2 also. The Healthcare Support Worker level 2 apprenticeship indicates that you must attempt the level 2 Maths and English. You don't necessarily have to pass, however it's in your interest to attempt to pass. So once level 1 has been achieved, we would naturally support you, stretch and challenge you to go on to achieve your level 2. There is an endpoint assessment that you will need to undertake once the other modules have been completed, and also a portfolio completed during the last 3 months that do support the endpoint assessment. So in level 3, you'll note that the only difference here is, and I've highlighted it on the screen, is that you do a level 3 diploma in healthcare support. So for the level 2 there is no diploma, but for the level 3 there is a diploma, so there are slightly more criteria to cover at a much higher level. So we mentioned endpoint assessment. What does EPA stand for? EPA stands for endpoint assessment, exactly what it is. Endpoint is a final test for you during your apprenticeship. It's designed to be objective and impartial, and it's assessment done by an independent endpoint assessment organisation and not peer training. So it does measure your knowledge, skills and behaviours and your learned behaviour over the length of the apprenticeship programme. Activities might be different for different apprenticeship standards, and we're going to look at what yours might be, but they all follow the same overall structure. Before going to endpoint assessment, you do need to achieve or certainly pass through Gateway. So Gateway is the process of deciding whether you're ready for endpoint assessment or not. So there'll be a short time between completing all of your modules and endpoint assessment, and that is called Gateway. So what happens is your tutor will do a review with you and your employer, looking at all of the evidence that's been gathered on programme to make sure you've met all of the requirements in order to then move on to endpoint assessment. So the care certificate, which is the first module in this particular standard, you may or may well be very familiar with it. You may currently be undertaking the care certificate. You may have completed the care certificate previously. And if not completed at all, then you will need to complete it. You'll be familiar with some of those topics and terminology on the screen there. Safeguarding is a typical one in healthcare environments, health and safety, obviously duty of care. So all of those things would be covered on this apprenticeship, and they link very nicely into the level 2 and level 3 standards. So you'll see some crossover in topics there. So you know, you'll be covering communication in the care certificate, but then you'll cover communication in a lot more depth once you go into the standard apprenticeship. Same with the other topics, duty of care, safeguarding, etc. But they are the standards that you are working towards achieving in your endpoint assessment. And incidentally, your endpoint assessment is made up of pass, merit or distinction. So when you're looking at these standards on the screen here, you would be looking at how you could aim for a pass, merit or distinction against all of that criteria. And the level 3, as you'll see, is slightly different. So the level 3 has other topics in there and also has particular pathways. So you may well work in theatre, in which case you can adopt the theatre pathway. You may well work on a ward that covers adult nursing or mental health, for example, so it would be appropriate for you to choose that pathway, and your decision is supported throughout, so we can help you make that decision based on another set of criteria. So at level 3 you work at the level that you are currently working in the hospital or in the care setting you work in. So theatre people would work in theatre, for example. You are expected to display a set of behaviours across the period of the apprenticeship and also during your endpoint assessment. You'll be assessed against those behaviours. They could cover things like self-awareness and empathy and discretion, and you may need to show evidence of how you've behaved in that way, and your tutor will help you to understand what evidence can be presented. So endpoint assessment then, if we look at endpoint assessment for both levels, so at level 2 you are expected to undertake a multiple choice online test, and that is against a set of knowledge criteria that you are taught on programme. You are expected to be observed in the workplace by the independent endpoint assessor, who will observe your practice against a set of skills and behaviours. You will gather evidence towards an evidence portfolio, and you'll be interviewed on that portfolio. So if we were to look at evidence gathering for the portfolio, we look at, for example, this evidence matrix, and there's a small snapshot of the evidence matrix there. So for example, if your tutor asked you to gather evidence that proved that you can recognise and respond to signs of poor mental health, or for example dementia, then you will have been learnt how to recognise that over the period of time on the apprenticeship. You will also have been taught how to gather evidence that supports that, and you may agree with your tutor what evidence will go in towards that portfolio. If you were looking at evidence for the top line, promote mental and physical health and well-being, that may well be in the form of a witness testimony, for example. Somebody may be happy to testify that you do that, or that you've provided evidence to support that. So just to summarise, the EPA is multiple choice tests first, observe practice in the workplace, in your hospital or care environment, wherever you work, the evidence portfolio, which we map against this matrix. So if we look at level 3, you'll note that there's not a lot of difference in the endpoint assessment, it just will be at a higher level. So there is a multiple choice test, a different set of questions. You will be observed in practice in the workplace. You will be expected to gather a portfolio and be interviewed on that portfolio. And again, it's against a set of criteria on a matrix. And if we look at the criteria here, you'll note that it's slightly different, a little bit more complex, and perhaps 2 or 3 things within the one paragraph. So if we look at CP2 here, describe a time when you noted a deterioration in an individual in their care and what action you took. So we would ask you to write a reflective account there. You know, what happened, when did it happen, who was involved, being very mindful of GDPR, of course, and that would allow you to contribute that evidence to this particular criteria. We may well support that reflective account with other evidence such as a witness testimony. If you were asked to describe the indicators of good physical or mental health, we may well ask you to complete a page of a workbook to cover that, or undertake a voice recorded guided discussion with your tutor. And that's how we start to gather evidence on programme across a period of time. But you would not be asked to gather that evidence until you felt comfortable and have undertaken the learning for that particular criteria. You are expected to complete functional skills in maths and English if you haven't got a valid exemption. So if we look at what that looks like, the functional skills for English, both level 2 and level 1, is speaking and listening. So you would be assessed against your speaking and listening. A reading and writing assessment. So 3 separate assessments there, can all be done on the same day, but all can equally be done separately. And what would happen is you would be observed during your speaking and listening assessment. You would sit an online test for your reading or a paper test, whichever is suitable, and an online or paper test for your writing. And again, you would be taught functional skills activities over the course of the programme, and you wouldn't be expected to sit the test until you're absolutely ready. And maths is slightly different. One calculator assessment and one non-calculator assessment. Again, can be done online or on paper and would have varying questions depending on the level. So you're also expected to cover 20% off the job training, and we ask you to complete a journal for that. So you would be required to input into an electronic journal on a weekly basis to explain what you feel has contributed to off the job training. We are exceptionally good at helping you decide and agree what is off the job. It doesn't necessarily mean you have 8 hours a week off a 35-hour a week role. It means that we help you effectively cover what is 20% off the job. For example, tutor time if you're attending sessions with your tutor, reading and research time, buddying and shadowing on a ward that you've perhaps not worked on before, or learning a new skill with a manager. So maybe hands-on but not necessarily on the job. So we'll help you effectively record that. So that's a requirement. You'll also be expected to log into a one-file e-portfolio system, especially linked to you and nobody else, so it'll show your ongoing progress. It will allow you to see planning, and this is where you are also able to access your learning journal. Again, that will be taught effectively should you wish to move forward with the programme. So your responsibilities and commitments really would be to meet with the tutor at least once a month, maybe more if the needs are required and are permitted. You would have a regular review and a one-to-one with your tutor, so you'd need to attend that and positively encourage your line manager to attend. You would need to be very prompt with any homework that you were asked to complete by accessing one file at least once a week and uploading homework evidence, and obviously accessing your journal and updating your off-the-job hours. That's vital. And of course you would need to remain committed throughout. So you really only get out of a qualification what you put into it. So by putting in that extra effort, you will certainly reap the reward. Before agreeing to start an apprenticeship, if you show an expression of interest, then we will undertake a live screening with you, whereby we ask you some more detailed questions about your existing skills to identify existing knowledge and understanding, what qualifications you may or may not have completed previously, what your current role is and what you do, and just to make sure that this is a really appropriate route for your academic progression. Often level 3 people might need to do a level 2, and level 2 people might actually be ready for a level 3, or we may indeed say that actually a level 3 may not be suitable for either, and that's what the screening is for. So we would expect you to undertake the screening as well. So if there are any questions, of course you can go to your contact within your workplace, but we have a dedicated email, info@peertraining.co.uk, and a phone that is manned between the hours of 9 to 5 on 0121 7400 where you can feel free to email or ring to ask any questions. However, the next steps would be to speak to your line manager, that's most important, and or your apprenticeship coordinator. So just to discuss your interest, showing interest. There would be an expression of interest form that would need to be completed, and as I said, there would be a screening document as well. So just to reiterate, we are offering the Healthcare Support Worker Level 2 Apprenticeship Standard, and those are the requirements, and that's what you would be committing to. And the Level 3 Healthcare Support Worker Apprenticeship Standard, and that's what you would be committing to. So all that is left for me to say is thank you for listening. I hope that that was as clear as it could be in the short snapshot that you've been able to see. And please enrol on information sessions that may or may not be planned for in your workplace. And please do email the info email or give us a call if you've got any further questions.